Hello and welcome. We would like to open by thanking the Alaska State Library, the Alaska State Network, Sustainable Heritage Network for allowing us the opportunity to share information about the E-rate program for tribal libraries. I am Cranell Alfred. I'm a member of the Navajo Nation, and I serve as the USAC Tribal Liaison. Colleague from the E-rate program, Candace Hilliard. She is the E-rate program's Manager of Communications. Before I hand over the mic to my colleague, I want to briefly introduce you to USAC. The Universal Service Administration Company is an independent, not-for-profit organization designated by the Federal Communications Commission, also known as the FCC, as the permanent administrator of the Universal Service Fund and its 4 programs. That includes the Lifeline program, the Rural Healthcare program, the High Cost program, and the E-rate program, which is the subject of today's training. The Universal Service Fund exists to ensure that all people in the United States have access to quality connectivity service. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Congress created multiple temporary programs to help people stay connected during this disruptive period. The FCC designated USAC as the administrator for the following programs, which include the Affordable Connectivity Program, the Emergency Connectivity Fund program, and the COVID-19 telehealth program. This slide is a quick overview about the creation of the E-rate program and how rules for the E-rate program are created. Congress enacted the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which directed the Federal Communications Commission to establish the E-rate program and USF programs. The FCC sets rules and policies for the program and gives direction to the Universal Service Administrative Company. We are responsible for the day-to-day administration of the E-rate program. If you think of any questions about any of the programs you have heard about in this presentation, after watching the presentation, please reach out to me at triballiaison@usac.org. At this time, I'll transition over to Candace Hilliard to provide the E-rate program overview.
Thank you, Cranell. Today, we're going to start by talking about what the E-rate program is and how it can help cover some costs that eligible entities incur to connect to the internet. We'll be focusing specifically on tribal libraries who may be new to the program. The E-rate program is one of the 4 programs at USAC that Cranell discussed earlier. It was established by the FCC to help schools and libraries across the US obtain high-speed internet access and telecommunications at affordable rates. E-rate helps schools and libraries, including tribal libraries such as yours, obtain this critical access through program discounts, and let's talk about that more in detail. Through E-rate, eligible entities receive discounts to reduce the cost of eligible services and equipment. E-rate provides discounts of up to 90% to eligible public or private schools and libraries. These discounts are provided for E-rate eligible services that are approved on the 471, and these services are called Category 1 and Category 2 services. We'll cover Category 1 and Category 2 in more detail a little later. The discounts result in a reduction of costs for services and equipment, with E-rate covering the discounted percentage of those costs. Let's walk through an example of how these discounts translate into cost reductions. If your eligible school or library purchased $1,000 worth of 100% eligible pre-approved services and equipment for a tribal library with a 90% discount, E-rate would pay $900, and the library would pay $100. This is a significant cost savings to eligible entities so that they can provide critical internet access and telecommunications in their communities. We've discussed what services are eligible. Next, let's talk about what entities are eligible. Generally speaking, E-rate considers entities from the following broad categories as eligible, but each type does have specific criteria. Libraries, including tribal libraries, schools, educational service agencies, also known as ESAs, non-instructional facilities, also known as NIFs, and groups of eligible entities. A tribal government can create a consortium for its tribally controlled schools and libraries, and a tribal government employee can act as the consortium leader. Today, we'll look specifically at libraries, the new tribal library eligibility, non-instructional facilities, and consortia. In order for a library to be eligible, the library must meet the following criteria. Its budget must be separate from any school budget. It cannot operate as a for-profit business. It must be eligible for assistance from the State Library Administrative Agency under the Library Services Technology Act, LSTA, as amended by the Museum and Library Services Act of 2018. There has been an update by the FCC on tribal library eligibility. The FCC updated the Commission's E-rate program rules to amend the definition of library and to clarify that tribal libraries are eligible for E-rate support. A library may be designated as a tribal library by a tribal council. Tribal libraries designated by a tribal council should be able to demonstrate that they have 3 basic characteristics of a library: regularly scheduled hours, staff, and materials available for library users. While we're on the topic of tribal library eligibility, I want to highlight a frequently asked question. Are tribal college libraries eligible for E-rate support? The answer is no. Libraries must be independent entities whose budgets are completely separate from any school. A non-instructional facility, or a NIF, is a building other than the main school or library building that is also eligible to receive discounts. In the case of a school, it's a school building without classrooms. In the case of a library, it's a library building without public access. Some examples of NIFs on library property include, but are not limited to, bookmobile garages, interlibrary loan facilities, and library technology centers. You can find out more about NIFs on the non-instructional facility page of the E-rate website. A consortium is a group of E-rate eligible entities that seeks competitive bids or E-rate funding for eligible services on behalf of its members. Schools and/or libraries can form consortia for the purposes of the E-rate program. They can run competitive bidding processes and/or apply for discounted services on behalf of their E-rate eligible members. Schools and libraries can also join together to form consortia. There are 2 common reasons why applicants will choose to form a consortium. One is to aggregate demand for lower prices, and the other is to provide expertise to assist smaller entities with the application process. These smaller entities can join together and allow the consortium leader to run the processes on their behalf. A tribal government can create a consortium for its tribally controlled schools and libraries, and a tribal government employee can act as the consortium leader. Alternatively, entities may create a consortium without the tribal government and designate a member entity as a consortium leader, or they may join a pre-existing consortium. Non-tribal members may join a consortium led by a tribal entity, and a tribal entity may join a consortium led by a non-tribal entity. The consortium leader is responsible for ensuring that necessary certifications are made, responding to USAC inquiries on behalf of members, and maintaining records. Consortium leaders must be authorized via letter of agency or LOA and an FCC Form 479 by each member to act on behalf of consortium members. For more details, see the letter of agency page on the E-Rate website. You can also review the registration checklist for new tribal libraries PDF on our website. I'll now go over a summary of services and equipment that are eligible in the E-Rate program. I'll dig a little deeper into the different categories of service in the program, some technology examples, and some additional explanations. During this section, we will focus on giving some clarity on these eligible services and equipment, along with some discussion of technical and E-Rate terms. E-Rate services are separated into categories. We have Category 1 and Category 2 services. Category 1 services allow a site to access publicly available internet or allow for the transmission of data between sites. These services do not have a budget limit, but must be a cost-effective option. Category 2 services occur within the building. There are 3 types of Category 2 services that E-Rate covers: internal connections, basic maintenance of internal connections, and managed internal broadband services. Internal connections consist of equipment needed to transmit data within the confines of your building. Basic maintenance of internal connections relates to repair and maintenance on those internal connections. The final subcategory, managed internal broadband services, is when you hire a vendor to control the operations of your internal network. I've included a link to the eligible services list for 2022, but you're strongly recommended to call our customer service center to be fully clear on these concepts. For contact information, visit the Contact Us page on the E-Rate website. Category 2 multipliers and funding floor are set by the FCC. For the funding year 2021 through funding year 2025 cycle, the school multiplier is $167 per student. The library multiplier is $4.50 per square foot for all libraries. The funding floor is $25,000. Applicants are eligible for the $25,000 funding floor when the Category 2 budget calculation for an entity results in a figure below the $25,000. If the total student count or square footage changes during the 5-year funding cycle, applicants may request a Category 2 budget recalculation, but they are not required to do so. Reminder, libraries shall calculate the pre-discount amount based on the total area for all floors in square feet of each library outlet separately, including all areas enclosed by the outer walls of the library outlet and occupied by the library, and those areas off limits to the public. Now I'll discuss some examples of Category 1 services. As mentioned earlier, Category 1 includes services that bring internet to the school or library building. Category 1 service includes allowing for transmission of data between your buildings and allowing your building to access publicly available internet services. These services can include circuits like point-to-point circuits that establish secure connectivity between locations so that they can transmit data between them. Internet access service can be provided in various ways. Some of the most common examples are internet service through a cable provider or internet via a satellite provider. Internet access services are connections from an eligible location to an internet service provider. These connections allow the library to access publicly available internet. In the example on this slide, it shows separate connections for Library 1 and Library 2 that allow internet connectivity for both libraries. These next couple of slides help clarify Category 1. Services are provided by a network of equipment and infrastructure that is utilized by a service provider to initiate the service. These cloud examples represent networks that local providers would use to provide data transmission services. The lightning bolts represent access to the network from the provider between the buildings. Data transmission services are secure connections between eligible locations. These connections would not include public internet access. This slide shows a connection between Library 1 and Library 2 that allows them to transmit data between them. This may be referenced as a point-to-point connection. As displayed in the slide, data transmission service alone does not allow access to the internet, so there's no connection to the internet service provider in this example. This slide represents libraries using both data transmission and internet access services. So both locations would have connectivity to an internet service provider, and there would be data transmission connection between the locations. It's possible that both services may come from the same provider and can be provided by one connection. The visualization on the slide is to represent the different services, even if provided by one physical connection. Now let's discuss Category 2 services. Category 2 services include equipment and services necessary for the transport of information to classrooms in the case of a school, or to publicly accessible areas in the case of a library. There are three types of Category 2 services. They are internal connections, or IC, which is equipment needed to utilize a broadband connection within a school or library. Basic maintenance of internal connections, or BMIC. This is the repair and upkeep of equipment needed to utilize the broadband connection. And managed internal broadband services, or MIBS. This is services provided by a vendor related to the operation, management, and monitoring of eligible internal connections. End user devices such as laptops or computers are not eligible for E-rate support. This slide includes some examples of Category 2 services. Internal connections includes items such as cabling, routers, switches, modems, and wireless access points. Also, if a device needs software to make it work, this is eligible as internal connections. These are commonly referred to as right to use and/or client access licenses. Basic maintenance of internal connections consists of the repair and upkeep of eligible internal connections, which includes the physical repair of a piece of equipment, and multi-year maintenance service subscriptions, such as updates to existing software, including deploying bug fixes and patches. Only maintenance services provided for the current funding year are eligible. For example, a 3-year subscription should be requested annually for 1/3 of the price over 3 years. Managed internal broadband services are managed Wi-Fi agreements where a vendor agrees to manage and operate the day-to-day support functions for an applicant's internal network. The next couple of slides provides insight into eligible Category 2 equipment and services, and some additional explanation on the utilization of these items. In this scenario, a library is receiving internet access service, which has been delivered by the service provider to the library's technical room to a terminating point, usually referenced as the demarcation point. The demarcation point is the furthest point of the service being provided by the service provider. Any equipment or infrastructure beyond the demarcation point, for example, inside the applicant's premises, is outside the scope of the service being provided by that service provider. This usually defines where Category 1 services end and Category 2 services begin. The applicant here is looking for internal connections to connect laptops and desktops to internet services. There are 5 types of eligible internal connections. These consist of cabling, which you see illustrated here, routers, firewalls, switches, and wireless access points. Let's discuss cabling. Cabling is utilized to provide connection to various devices and to transport information. For example, if you have 2 pieces of equipment that are in different parts of the building, cabling can be utilized to connect the 2 devices. Routers and firewalls. These 2 eligible devices are represented on the slide as a bundled device, but routers and firewalls are also eligible as separate devices under Category 2. The router can act as the initial device in your internal network. It is the main communication point between the internet access service and the devices in your internal network. A firewall acts as a barrier between the internal network and the public internet. This works to protect your internal network from unauthorized external access. The final two pieces of eligible equipment are switches and wireless access. A switch acts as a connecting device for multiple other devices. For example, multiple computers can be plugged into a switch. The switch can facilitate communication between the computers while also acting as a transmission point back to the main router. The two wireless access points depicted here receive and transmit wireless internet to applicable devices such as laptops with wireless modems. Now let's discuss another option. Basic maintenance of internal connections is eligible on equipment that is E-rate eligible. In this example, a cable and wireless access point are not functioning properly. Since these are eligible equipment in the program, the maintenance and repair of these items is also eligible. These are indicated by the green not working icon. In this example, we also included a desktop computer that is malfunctioning. Since end user devices are not eligible in the E-rate program, the cost of repair for the computer would not be eligible in the program. This is indicated by the red not working icon. The final category 2 service is managed internal broadband services. If you need help in the daily operation of your internal network, this service provided by a vendor is eligible as managed internal broadband services, or MIBS. The vendor can support equipment that an applicant already owns, or they can manage equipment that the vendor installs and leases to the applicant. The vendor performs actions on the equipment to ensure the day-to-day operations of the internal network. These services are only eligible for actions performed on equipment eligible in the E-rate program. If devices in the network stop working properly, then the repair of those devices would need to be requested under basic maintenance. Properly categorizing your purchases in the program as category 1 or category 2 and selecting the correct subcategory is critical to your success in the E-rate program. If you have any uncertainty about how to categorize your equipment and services, or the percentage of the equipment that is eligible under E-rate, please contact our Customer Service Center for expert guidance. See the Contact Us page on the E-rate website. Let's now discuss some of the basic concepts related to Category 1 fiber services. Generally, Category 1 services can be delivered utilizing various transmission methods, such as fiber, copper, microwave, or satellite. This section will focus on services classified as fiber services. Category 1 fiber services are classified into 3 types: leased lit fiber, leased dark fiber, and self-provisioned fiber networks. Leased lit fiber is an all-inclusive service where the vendor provides internet access over fiber. The applicant pays a monthly fee to the service provider, and the vendor provides all the components needed to maintain the service. Leased dark fiber. In this option, service providers lease the fiber only. The applicant will need to find another provider to activate the service or light the fiber. Applicants can lease portions of this unused fiber network that is owned by a service provider. This lease would only be to utilize the fiber. The applicant needs to account for any network equipment needed to utilize the fiber and associated costs of maintenance and operation of the fiber. The applicant would also need to account for any data transport and/or internet access service over that fiber. The third fiber option is self-provisioned networks. Applicants can also seek bid responses for ownership of a high-speed broadband network. If and only if this is determined to be the most cost-effective option, the applicant hires a vendor to construct the network or a portion of the network. The applicant can completely or partially own and maintain that construction. A self-provisioned network can be shared with an ineligible third-party entity, so long as the ineligible third party pays their fair share of the undiscounted cost of the network. Although included as a fiber option, a self-provisioned network may utilize technologies other than fiber, for example, copper, microwave, and/or satellite. The applicant owns the network and hires a service provider to construct it. Note that this option provides the network infrastructure, and the applicant must still account for network equipment needed to make the network functional, any cost associated to maintain the network, and pay for any data transport and/or internet access services separately. If an applicant is utilizing any of these fiber services, there may be the need for equipment that will light the fiber and make it ready for use. This type of equipment is called Category 1 network equipment. This equipment is eligible under Category 1. As stated previously, Category 1 is to the building. Category 1 services stop at the demarcation point. So Category 1 network equipment would be located at the demarcation point. It can also be referred to as basic terminating equipment. There is a special component of Category 1 services called a tribal match. Tribal match can apply to funding requests for special construction. Special construction charges are the upfront, non-recurring costs of deploying new or upgraded network facilities to eligible entities. There are 3 specific components of special construction. These components are construction of network facilities, design and engineering, and project management. You can seek this match if you're seeking leased lit fiber, which is serviced through existing fiber networks, leased dark fiber, which requires you to install fiber and light it yourself through a separate vendor, or self-provision networks, where you build and own the network. All of these options are eligible for tribal match. Special construction is important because if your funding request is for special construction, then it's possible for you to get matching funds above your discount level. If a state provides an eligible school or library with funding for special construction charges, the E-rate program will increase an applicant's discount rate for these charges up to an additional 10%. This 10% would match the state funding on a one-to-one dollar basis. Note, the service must be high-speed broadband that meets the FCC's long-term connectivity targets. State funding can be authorized directly by a state legislature or provided by one or more state agencies. To illustrate this example, if the applicant is eligible for an 80% discount rate and receives 10% from their tribal government, the E-rate will match that 10%, and the applicant will pay nothing for the special construction costs. More information is available on the additional discount to match state or tribal funding for special construction page of our website. Now let's talk about the application process. Just a quick review of the major steps of the process. The application process is comprised of 4 broad phases: competitive bidding, applying for discounts, services start, and invoicing. On the next slide, we'll go over the forms for each step. This slide introduces you to the major E-rate forms. We offer in-depth training each year, and past training sessions are available for viewing on the website. The first program form, the FCC Form 470, opens the competitive bidding process. This begins at least 28 days prior to selecting a vendor and filing an FCC Form 471. This could be longer depending on your specific state and/or tribal rules. The second program form, the FCC Form 471, captures the results of the competitive bidding process. This form becomes your request for pre-approval of specific equipment and services. It includes the service providers that you've chosen, cost of the service, and other information that we use to calculate your discount. We use this to make sure your entity is eligible and the services you're requesting are eligible. The application window for filing FCC Form 471 varies from year to year, but generally takes place from mid-January through mid-March. The exact dates are determined annually by the FCC. After applicants submit the 471, USAC then issues one or more funding decisions in the form of a funding commitment decision letter on your request. The third form is the FCC Form 486. This form has two purposes. It establishes the dates that services start, which can be as early as the first day of the funding year, which is July 1st. It also provides us with the status of your compliance with the Children's Internet Protection Act, which is a federal law having to do with filtering content on the internet for students, library patrons, and staff members. The last step in the process is the invoicing. Once you have received services, you or your service provider will invoice USAC for the discounted amount. Invoicing for recurring services takes place generally from July through the following October, and invoicing for non-recurring services takes place from July through the following January. You have two options with invoicing. You can receive payments directly of your discounted share from the E-rate program via the 472 Billed Entity Applicant Reimbursement or BEAR process. Your other option is to only pay your non-discounted share to the service provider and have them invoice E-rate for the discounted share via the 474 Service Provider Invoicing or SPI process. Those are the four main steps in the process: competitive bidding, applying for discounts, starting services, and invoicing. A funding year starts on July 1st of a year and ends on June 30th of the following year. The funding year is named using the year it starts. For example, funding year 2022 starts on July 1st, 2022 and ends on June 30th, 2023. Funding year 2023 starts on July 21st, 2023 and ends on June 30th, 2024. Now let's talk about the timing for delivery and installation of services. Recurring services must be delivered during the funding year. You must refile for recurring services each year. An example of recurring services is monthly internet access. Non-recurring services can generally be installed through September 30th following the close of the funding year. You automatically get an additional 3 months after June 30th to install non-recurring services. An example of non-recurring services is equipment installation. The September 30th deadline can sometimes be extended either automatically or by request. Delivery and installation can sometimes start before the funding year. For example, before July 1st, there are specific requirements. When applicants start the competitive bidding process by submitting FCC Form 470, USAC posts that information and service providers submit bids to the applicants. The 470 must be posted for at least 28 days before an applicant can select a service provider and enter into a service agreement with them. To meet these requirements, the FCC Form 470 must be submitted by April 28th, 2022. This allows time to also submit the funding application, FCC Form 471, by May 26th, 2022. May 26th is the last day of the extended filing window for new tribal library applicants. We encourage applicants to submit their FCC Form 470 as soon as possible and not wait until April 28th to do so. Applicants must carefully consider all bids received and then select a service provider using price as the primary factor. Other factors may be used in the bid evaluation process, but price of the eligible equipment and services must be weighted most heavily. Although competitive bidding is a program requirement, there are some exceptions. These exceptions include, first, multi-year contracts, which have already been competitively bid through the 470 process. And second, Category 1 equipment and services for low-cost, high-speed internet access, which is commercially available business class internet access. This low-cost, high-speed internet access is exempt if the following conditions are met. 1, it is commercially available. This slide outlines what that means in more detail. 2, it is low cost, meaning that the total annual pre-discount cost for the service including any one-time costs such as installation, does not exceed $3,600 per year per entity. And 3, it is high speed. This means that the service must provide bandwidth speeds of at least 100 megabits per second downstream and 10 megabits per second upstream. If the services you're purchasing meet all of these requirements, you do not need to competitively bid the services through an FCC Form 470. If the services you are purchasing do not meet all of these requirements, you would need to file your FCC Form 470 by April 28th before starting your contract, and your FCC Form 471 by May 26th for this funding year. Today, we'll talk about all of this in more detail and give you the tools to take these steps. Let's talk a little bit more about bidding from the perspective of the state and tribal-wide contract purchasing, in case this is an option for you. There are 2 options. First, a state or tribal-wide agency can submit a state or tribal-wide FCC Form 470 that applicants can reference if they are included as part of that process. Alternatively, if the statewide agency doesn't submit a statewide FCC Form 470, the applicant is required to purchase from an already established statewide contract. Applicants can submit their own FCC Form 470 and can communicate the requirement to purchase from a state master contract as a disqualifying factor so that they only receive bids for vendors who are approved on the state master contract. USAC uses the term filing window to refer specifically to the timeline for submitting the second program form, FCC Form 471. You can choose to complete the competitive bidding process early and even sign contracts, but you must wait until the FCC Form 471 filing window opens before you can file this form. The window is generally open for about 2.5 months, from mid-January to mid-March, in advance of the start of the funding year. The funding year 2022 filing window is open from January 12th, 2022 through March 22nd, 2022. Of course, that does not take into account the extension that we referred to earlier. If you file outside this filing window, you are not considered for funding unless you ask for and receive a waiver from the FCC. After filing your FCC Form 470, waiting at least 28 days, and selecting your service provider, the next step is to submit funding requests for the eligible equipment and/or services by filing the FCC Form 471 funding application. Applications are reviewed for compliance by USAC. USAC may reach out to you for additional information regarding your funding applications during the review process. You will receive a funding commitment decision letter, FCDL, from USAC that will approve, modify, or deny your funding request. You may appeal USAC's funding decisions if you disagree with the decisions. Please see the E-Rate webpage entitled Appeals for more information. Applicants must pay their non-discounted share of costs. This is the portion of the cost of the eligible equipment and/or services that you are required to pay. For example, if you qualify for a 90% Category 1 discount rate, you're required to pay 10% of the cost for the eligible equipment and/or services, and the E-Rate program will reimburse the remaining 90% of the cost. If the applicant pays the service provider 100% of the cost of the eligible equipment and/or services, the applicant may request reimbursement of the discounted share of costs, i.e. 90% that was paid to the service provider using the FCC Form 472 bear form and submitting to USAC. Applicants may also pay their service provider only their non-discounted share, i.e. 10%, and the service provider may request reimbursement for the remaining 90% of the cost from USAC by submitting the FCC Form 474 SPY form. Applicants may choose the invoicing mode, i.e. bear or SPY, that is to be used for each funding request in the E-Rate program. At the time of this recording, the next application cycle is expected to start in July 2023 for funding year 2023 that runs from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. We encourage you to visit the E-Rate website where you can find in-depth training resources and subscribe to the E-Rate News Brief and the E-Rate Tribal e-newsletter. You may also email questions to tribaltraining@usac.org. Thank you for your interest in the E-Rate program.